back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here. On this Tuesday, July 16th, we have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. It's kind of going to be a quarterback-themed show, pretty much, for all the segments, with the exception of one. So we're going to continue our quarterback rankings. Today we will be going over the NFC North quarterbacks, so I will rank them. And then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers. More comments from him on how he's feeling. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the trip that he had, the trip to Egypt that he had. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're not going to go into it because I don't really know the specifics of the trip other than that's where he went. So we'll get into that. Then we will talk about Saquon Barkley, just his comments on the longevity of a running back. Had some interesting comments there, so I wanted to talk about that. Trevor Lawrence, we'll talk about him in the fourth part of the show, get into what he has to say about the upcoming 2024 season for the Jags, and then in the final part of the show, so, you know, there's been those top 10 lists of pretty much each position and the head coach as well, that, you know, executives and coaches have, you know, put together, and there were some comments made about Brock Purdy by an executive anonymously, and I just kind of wanted to go over that because Brock Purdy was left out of the top 10, so I wanted to give you my thoughts on that as well. So that's the rundown for the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the NFC North. And this is going to be one of the best divisions in football, in my opinion, this year. It's not as good as the AFC North, but I think it's going to be a very good division. And let's get into the rankings here. So at 4, I have J.J. McCarthy / Sam Darnold because I don't really know who's going to end up starting the year. It seems like it's going to be Sam Darnold to start the year, and I think eventually during the year we're going to see J.J. McCarthy at some point. And I like the Vikings roster. I like their offense a lot. Of course, you have Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in football in many people's eyes. Jordan Addison looks like he's going to be a good number 2. T.J. Hawkinson. Aaron Jones is now the lead back. So I like the Vikings offense. My thing is not really sure how Sam Darnold's going to be if he does end up starting. I mean, he's got a good supporting cast around him, so you would expect him to do, you know, at least decent until it's time to put in J.J. McCarthy. And I don't really know what to expect from J.J. McCarthy. And, you know, there's another rookie quarterback that's going to be starting, but I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit higher on him than I am on J.J. McCarthy. I know people have their criticisms when it comes to J.J. McCarthy, just the fact that, you know, Michigan ran the ball a ton of times and, you know, he kind of, you know, wasn't really asked to do much. I know there's some criticism with that. So, you know, that's going to be put to the test at some point. I think he ended up in a good situation. There's people out there that say he's going to be Zach Wilson 2.0. But Zach Wilson went to a team in the Jets that, you know, they've had some problems developing quarterbacks in recent memory. And I think ending up on the Vikings, I think, is a good situation for him. And he's not going to start right away. It looks that way. But that's why I have, you know, both of them here, because I think they're going to get their fair share of well, I don't know if I want to say fair share, but they're going to both see the field at some point this year. And I know if you could see to the left there, there's Nick Mullins as well. But I don't think you're going to see. I mean, if you're seeing Nick Mullins playing, then that could be a problem. But I think, you're going to see Sam Darnold start the year, and then eventually they're going to transition to J.J. McCarthy, I think, at some point during the year. But I'm going to put them at 4. So that's the number 4 spot. Then at 3, we got Caleb Williams. I feel like I'm the highest when it comes to Caleb Williams amongst the rookie quarterbacks this year. And I think part of that's the number 1 overall pick. And, he did put up solid numbers in college. I think towards the end there, there was some criticism. But I don't know. I feel like J.J. McCarthy, believe it or not, I think he ended up in a good situation with the Bears. And that's something that, you normally don't say about a quarterback. But I love what the Bears did this offseason. I think their receiving core is one of the best in the league with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. And you also got Cole Kmet, who's a good tight end. And I think they're going to be backed by a good running game. You bring in DeAndre Swift, who's coming off of a nice year with the Eagles. You know what? And I think like J.J. McCarthy, you're going to see some early struggles. It's not like they're going to, set the world on fire right away. It's going to take some time. Now, Caleb Williams, unlike some of these other rookie quarterbacks, he's going to start right away. I mean, the Bears have already said that he's going to be the starting quarterback. So, there might be some early season struggles. I think they got a fairly winnable game against the Titans in week 1. But then you get put to the test in week 2. Sunday Night Football against the Texans. But we'll have to see. And I think he could be good. I think these 3 and 4 spots, you could kind of flip them if depending on which quarterback you like better. For me, I didn't watch a ton of film on these guys. I sound like a guy that, an analyst that watches film, but it's not like I spent hours watching both of these guys play. I'm basing it off of the situations that they ended up in. And I don't know. I feel like Caleb Williams, he's going to have the better year than the Vikings quarterbacks, just in my opinion. But that's my thoughts on it. But we'll have to see, when we get to the 2024 season. So then at number 2, got Jordan Love. I am very high on Jordan Love going into 2024. And I think by the end of the year, we could be looking at him taking over that number 1 spot in this division. But for now, I'm going to put him at 2. And it was a roller coaster season for him and the Packers last year. Got off to a good start. Then in the middle of the year, it looked like he wasn't the guy. But then towards the end, the Packers went on a hot streak. He started playing really well and put together a really good season. Won a playoff game against the Cowboys. They had the 49ers on the ropes. I'm expecting him to go out there and play really well. But there's also a chance that, maybe he doesn't repeat what he did last year. We got to see him be consistent over the course of the whole season. And yeah, there's going to be some struggles here and there. I think everybody, every team goes through struggles. But the Packers, in the middle of the year, they looked like one of the worst teams in football, especially offensively. But Jordan Love got right, and he played really well. He looked like an MVP candidate. So, I think there's some things he's got to work on. Because the last pass that he threw at the end of the year, that was not good. That looked like the Jordan Love that was turning the ball over in the middle of the year. So you want to correct that. And I think he's got a good array of weapons around him. You got Josh Jacobs now coming out of the backfield. So I'm looking forward to the Packers and their season. And I think Jordan Love is going to put up good numbers once again this year. Packers should be a playoff team once again. So I have him at the 2 spot right now, but like I said, could take that 1 spot. Don't be surprised at the end of the year, but we'll see. And then at number 1, you got Jared Goff. Last year, played really well. I mean, led the Lions to the NFC Championship game. And, I expect him to have another solid year again. Now, I think, the other thing for why I believe Jordan Love can maybe take over as the number one QB in the division is also his ability to, take off and run with it if he has to. Jared Goff is still one of the more, traditional pocket passers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's just another dimension to Jordan Love's game that maybe is lacking with Jared Goff. But still, out of respect for him and what he did last year, I'm still putting him at number one in this division. And he's got a good supporting cast around him. I'd like to see, another receiver step up in that offense besides Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I know I've talked about it. Jameson Williams could be that guy. They got a good tight end, Sam Laporta, going into his second season. A pair of good running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs going into his second year as well. And David Montgomery. Solid offensive line. I mean, I expect Jared Goff to go out there and have a good year as well. And the Lions, they are one of the top teams in the NFC. And, we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of encore performance they put on. Because last year, they made it to the championship game. Now, they have bigger aspirations than that. They want to try to get to the Super Bowl. And Jared Goff has played in the Super Bowl. He's played in a lot of big games over the course of his career. And I expect him to be playing in more big games when we get to the postseason. But last year, I think he put up, what was it? It was 30 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. It's a solid year. And I expect that to continue in 2024. And, and I've talked about this too. Just very happy for him that it's worked out here in Detroit, after, the Matthew Stafford trade and him getting traded over and the Lions weren't very good. But they really turned this franchise around. And, let's see what they do in 2024. So just to recap the rankings. So we got J.J. McCarthy / Sam Darnold at 4. Caleb Williams 3. Jordan Love 2. Jared Goff 1. Like I said, don't be surprised, if I have Jordan Love ranked ahead of Jared Goff by the end of the year. When it comes to the rookie quarterbacks, it's tough because, you just don't know until they eventually play. But I don't know. I feel like I'm high on Caleb Williams. I think he's going to play well, but we'll see. So those are my rankings. Let me know what you guys think about them. We are going to take now our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about another quarterback. We'll talk about Aaron Rodgers, the trip that he went on, as well as some comments that he made recently about, working his way back from the injury. So we'll get into all that when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, just some more comments on his recovery from the Achilles injury that he suffered last year, and also the trip that he went on. So he did confirm on Friday, reports confirmed on Friday, that he was in Egypt when he missed mandatory minicamp in June, after, appearing in all the voluntary OTAs, or involuntary OTAs. So, I mean, I don't know what exactly he was doing there. I know people have their theories on what he could have been doing on this trip. He said it was a great time, but it was interesting timing, to say the least. And that maybe there could have been a way to work around. I don't know. But that's where he was. He said had a nice OTAs, had a beautiful trip to Egypt, and this is like the last marker. Summer is over on Sunday. Walking up hole 18 is like super bittersweet, but it's fun to be out there. So yeah, because I was in the NBC, the American Century Championship golf tournament. All the celebrities are playing in it. So we're watching that. I think he got a hole in one. So he said the Achilles feels good, and he said he felt really good at the end of last year. Then he said there's always that kind of plateau part. It's just about getting back into it. And he said and then he's talking about the golf tournament. My first round out, I was fortunate or lucky enough to make an ace at 17 at Shadow Creek. That's been the highlight of my golf off-season. But we're not really focused on that. We're focused on the football side of things. And it seems like, he's in a good spot, and I hope he is. I really hope he is. I want him to go out there and have a good year. And that's just from a pure football perspective. There's no other angle on this. I want to see Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, go out there and have a really good year, because I think he's an all-time great, as many other people do. He's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen play. I think Mahomes is kind of taking that title away from him. I can't, Mahomes is at 3 championships now. I mean, what he's been able to do in such a short period of time is ridiculous. And it makes me sad, because I think Rodgers deserves to have more than one ring. But that's not the case. And some interesting comments by RG3 recently, which is something we talked about in our production meeting yesterday, that if Rodgers plays like how he did in his last year in Green Bay, the Jets will win the Super Bowl. And you had some people saying they might not even make the playoffs in the meeting. I took the stance of, listen, I think the Jets have a very good roster, and I think that they should make the playoffs with the roster that they have. But, even the years that Rodgers won MVP, the Packers didn't go to the Super Bowl. His first MVP, lost to the Giants in the divisional round, won the MVP in 2014. Now, they should have made it to the Super Bowl, but there was just a lot of fluky things that happened in the NFC Championship game against Seattle. But you know what? The Seahawks won the game. But if you're a Seahawks fan and you're watching this, don't tell me that there were some fluky plays that happened. The onside kick. Also, the 2-point conversion in that game when Russell Wilson just threw the ball up and Luke Wilson just happened to catch it. No Green Bay player in sight. Shouldn't say that, but they just played that horribly. And that was on the Marshawn Lynch touchdown that put them ahead after the onside kick. Just some fluky plays in that game. But still, again, Seattle won the game, give them credit. Then, they lost to the Buccaneers in the championship game in 2020 against Tom Brady. And then the following year, because I was watching more of the receiver series on Netflix. You had the divisional round against the 49ers, losing 13-10 at home. And that was another MVP year by Rodgers. So it's just, if Rodgers plays like how he did his last year in Green Bay, again, it's not like he had an awful year, but, it was a year where he didn't throw for 300 yards in a single game. The Packers missed the playoffs. But, yeah, the Jets, I think this Jets team on paper is better than the Packers team in 2022. I think we could all say that. But I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. I'm optimistic that the Jets can win the division and make the playoffs, but I am not that optimistic where I could say this team is going to win the Super Bowl. Can they do it? Yeah, they got the team to do it. But I just think Rodgers, time and time again in the playoffs, it doesn't work out. And not all of it is on him. Now, I think the last 2 playoff games, especially the one against the 49ers, you could really pin the blame on him because the Packers only put up 10 points at home. Like, how do you do that? The 49ers did not score an offensive touchdown in that game. That game, I got to concede, that is on Rodgers. But, listen, this could be the time to prove everybody wrong. I mean, look, Tom Brady went to a different team, won a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford went to a different team, won a Super Bowl. Both their first years being on their new teams. Peyton Manning, it took some time. He made it to a Super Bowl his second year, but we all know what happened against Seattle. Of course, it was the year where he looked washed. And that was the year the Broncos defense just carried that team all the way to the Super Bowl. One of the greatest defenses of all time. And he won the Super Bowl with the Broncos. So, Peyton's done it. Brady's done it. Stafford's done it. Rodgers, you think you could do it? And you know what? You could throw Drew Brees in there, too. Because Drew Brees started out with the Chargers, and then he went to the Saints, and he won a Super Bowl there. Throw Drew Brees in there, right? Why not? I don't know. I would love to see a Rodgers Super Bowl, another one. Because, again, I think he deserves another one. I think to retire with just one, but that's just me. So we'll see. But, there's some people that just think, oh, it's going to be the same old Jets. They're going to, they're going to find a way to screw it all up. And that could be true. But this is take 2. And, I mean, it's right out of the gate. Jets play the 49ers on Monday night. I mean, and Leonard Floyd, who sacked Rodgers, is on the 49ers. So it's, believe me, I'm going to be watching that game, and I'm going to be like covering my eyes every time, Rodgers gets hit. Because you're afraid. I mean, Jet fans are going to be like that. I mean, this is me, because I don't want to see him get hurt. I don't want to see him get hurt again. But, we'll see what happens. But if he's healthy and, at least is competent, that's all the Jets really need. They just need a competent quarterback play. The Jets should have a good year. Because that defense will finally have an offense that's going to back them up. Give them a shot in games. Because you know what? They probably gave up. Because they're like, this offense can't score points with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. We're past that. You got Aaron Rodgers back. And if he gets hurt, Tyrod Taylor is serviceable enough where, he could get the job done, I think. And then I think the Jets have a doable schedule to start off the year. After the 49ers, you play the Patriots, the Titans, the Vikings are in there. I'm trying to think who else off the top of my head. But yeah, those are winnable games. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, too, is also from watching the receiver series. And there's talk about it in the media as well, about Davante Adams going to the Jets. And there's people that think it's actually going to happen. Now, I'll believe it when I see it. That's the approach I'm going to take with it. But you get Davante Adams in there with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and you're back with Rodgers again. That makes this offense look even scarier. Now, I'm not going to say this offense is at that point where it's scary. Because Rodgers has to prove that he's healthy. And if he's healthy, yeah. Because, you got Breece Hall, who could have a monster year, another monster year in 2024. And Rodgers being healthy will make Garrett Wilson better. But, some of the other, let's see what the other weapons can do. The receiver that they drafted, Mike Williams, How is this offensive line going to hold up too? That's the other thing. But yeah, you bring Davante Adams in there, that's a game changer. Really is. But we'll see. It's hard for me to think that's going to happen, but we will see. I mean, Rodgers did say he can't wait to play with Davante Adams again. But that could also mean he goes to Vegas after this year. And he plays a year in Vegas. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I don't see it happening. But what do I know? What do I know? But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, I want Rodgers to have a good year. I think he will. But I'm nervous with it. Because I don't know. He's in his 40s now, coming off of a major injury. I don't know if he's going to play till he's 45 like Tom Brady. Because Tom Brady stayed relatively healthy his whole career. And you know what? Rodgers had... There's been years that he's gotten hurt. The collarbones and, his knees, I believe. Had to get surgery on those. And, of course, the Achilles now. But I feel like he's... there was a time period where he stayed healthy. But it was just a freak thing that happened. So, but let me know what you guys think. How do you see Rodgers performing in 2024? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Saquon Barkley, his comments on the longevity of a running back. So I wanted to get into that and give you my thoughts. But we will do that when we come back from our next break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about Saquon Barkley's stance on the longevity of a running back. So this is what he recently said. And yeah, he talked about it. He said that's BS. This is what he said. He told E.J. Smith of the Philadelphia Inquirer in a lengthy feature. Marcus Allen played until he was 36, 37 years old. Some of the greats that I admire and I look up and study, they played well into their 30s. Barry Sanders left at 29, 30, and he left in his prime. It's what you put in. What you put in is what you get out. That's any position. There's this weird thing with running backs right now. Is it a difficult position to play? Yes. Do you take wear and tear? Yes. But who are you or anyone else to tell me how long I could play the game? He said, I call BS. He said, well, it's over for me. It's over for me, but I feel like I continue to put the right stuff in my body and do the right things. There will be a day when I'm 32 or 33 and I just want to hang it up, and I'm going to do it just because. He said, I've been trying to control everything. Like I have to do this so I won't get hurt. I can't control that. My or 4 injuries I've had in the NFL are flukes. There was nothing I could do to change them, but that's what it is. Everything I want to be and all the potential people talk about when I'm on the field, I'm that and more. And then he also said, for me, it's simple. When I'm on the field, I'm one of the best, if not the best. I just have to stay on the field, knock on wood. It's not injuries like a pulled hamstring or something like that. I tore my knee and I had 2 or 3 high ankle sprains that sat me out. Everything I want is still there. Everything I want to accomplish, I can still go out there and do it. I just have to believe in myself and go to work. If it doesn't happen, it wasn't in the cards. But every day I'm going to try to climb up that mountain and try to make it to the top. So he had a lot to say there. Well, here's the thing. One thing I will say is, I mean, you could say you will decide, but, you know, if you're not producing, teams are going to decide your fate by simply just not signing you. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, look at some of these guys that are looking for jobs, like Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook. You know, I mean, I think those guys still deserve to be on a roster, but right now they're not. They're having a hard time looking for teams because they're getting older. And look at the kind of season Dalvin Cook had last year. Now, I've said, look, it was with the Jets. I mean, Breece Hall was healthy. You know, Rodgers got hurt. But he's 28. He's not on the team right now. Leonard Fournette, you know, he's 30, I believe. You know, he's looking to sign with the team. You know, it's hard for some guys once they get past their prime. And Saquon Barkley is a running back that has dealt with a lot of injuries, and he said they're flukes, which, yeah, I mean, how he was tackled, that kind of led to, you know, some of these injuries, the ACL and the injury he suffered last year too, how he was tackled. But there's still injuries. And eventually, if those injuries continue to pile up, you know, there's going to be teams that are going to stay away. Now, you got guys like Raheem Mostert that are on teams. I mean, he's coming off of a great year with the Dolphins, but, you know, he's not young as a running back. He's in his 30s. You know, Latavius Murray still finds a way to be on NFL rosters. You know, I mean, it's just, yeah, just because you're older doesn't mean, you know, if you still got some, you know, pop, then, I know I said pop, I don't know, thinking of baseball, but anyway, you know, if you still got some oomph left, yeah, I mean, you're going to find a way on a team. And maybe Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette are going to find their way on teams. But, yeah, he brings up Barry Sanders and Marcus Allen. I mean, for me, in my lifetime, I mean, I look at Marshawn Lynch and especially Adrian Peterson. I mean, how many teams did Adrian Peterson end up on, you know, after the Vikings? You know, he was on the Saints. He was on Washington. You know, I forgot he even played for Seattle towards the end. Played for the Titans for like a game or two. He was on the Lions. You know, he bounced all over the place. The Cardinals. He bounced all over the place. But you know what? He's still, for the most part, not every team, but, you know, still produced. Not like, you know, his prime years in Minnesota, but still produced. And then you had Marshawn Lynch. I mean, I don't really remember much from Marshawn Lynch's tenure with the Raiders after Seattle. I know he came back to Seattle when they were decimated at the running back position, and he scored, like, I'm pretty sure he scored a touchdown in every game that he played in. He scored a touchdown against the 49ers. I think, did he score a touchdown against the, because they played the Eagles in the first round. He might have not. And then I know he scored a touchdown against the Packers in the divisional round that year. But yeah, you know, Marshawn Lynch, Adrian Peterson, those, you know, they played for a while. You know, they played into their 30s. And look at Derrick Henry. He's in his 30s, and he's the lead back of the Ravens right now. So he could be that version of Adrian Peterson where, you know, he's playing into his 30s and he's still producing. Look at Frank Gore as well. After the 49ers, Frank Gore was bouncing all over the place. Went to the Colts, the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins. Now, he wasn't like the lead back, but still, I mean, he was still finding his way on rosters. But I think some of that could also have to do with him just being a veteran and, bringing along these younger guys too. But yeah, it is a weird time for running backs. But Saquon Barkley did get paid a lot of money. And we're going to find out more about with the Hard Knocks episode tonight, how, the whole thing with the Giants went down. And I'll try to recap it tomorrow because tonight's going to be a late night for me. I'll see if I can get to it. I'm going to try to watch it and then we'll discuss it. But yeah, it is an interesting time for running backs. And, some teams are just hesitant to give them big contracts because, the wear and tear. It's one of the toughest positions to play because you're constantly getting hit. And you decline faster. And Saquon Barkley, like I said before, has dealt with a lot of injuries. Whether they're flukes or not, there's still injuries. And all it takes is one. And it derails your whole career. And you don't get another shot. Now, I'm not rooting for that, but I'm just saying. And he's been able to bounce back. And, even with these injuries, was still producing. Post torn ACL, still put up good numbers. I mean, 2022 he was solid for the Giants, and when he came back after the ankle sprain, he was still producing. But the Giants just wasn't a good situation for him. The Giants were just in no position to compete for anything when he first got drafted. Now, they told us, we got Eli Manning, and, we're going to try to, put a team around him to win. You had Odell Beckham Jr. there, Sterling Shepard, before all of his injuries. The Giants thought that drafting Barkley, giving Eli Manning a running game, they were just going to be this very good team. But they had a lot of flaws. And then 2019, you drafted Daniel Jones, and he came in and didn't do anything that year. 2020, Barkley only plays one full game and then tears his ACL. 2021 was a disaster. 22, they made the playoffs. And then last year, just a lot went wrong. They finished the season strong, but Barkley ended up leaving. And, now he's with the Eagles, and I think he's going to have a very good year with the Eagles. He's going to be running behind a good offensive line for the first time in his career, really. And he should put up big numbers. Just not against the Giants. But I think the way this offseason has gone and how Giant fans have been constantly going at him, he's going to want to stick it to the Giants. And it's going to hurt, but Giant fans kind of, put some gasoline on the fire. And Barkley's got those games circled on his calendar. So Giants did it to themselves if he goes off. But yeah, it's just it's interesting. I mean, if a player is still producing at a high level or still producing to some extent, I mean, yeah, it shouldn't matter what age they are. But, if they get injured and you start to see a little bit of a decline, they're going to feel inclined to move on. And we've seen that a lot with running backs. But I think Barkley has a point where, if you're producing, you should still have a job. But, ultimately, teams are going to decide what your fate is. If no team is going to sign you, you're kind of on your own there. But I think Barkley's still got some good years left. I don't think he has to worry about, teams not being interested in him. He's still got some good football left in him, and I think he's going to go out there and have a good year. But at some point, he's not going to have the explosiveness that he has had in the past. That's going to go away. And it might be harder for him to find another team. So, but we'll see what happens. But that's just my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think, though, about what Barkley had to say. Do you agree with him? Do you disagree with him? That's basically it when it comes to this topic. So we are going to take our next break, and when we come back, we'll get back to the quarterbacks. We will talk about Trevor Lawrence, his comments on the upcoming season for the Jaguars. We'll get into that when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to get back to talking about quarterbacks. We'll talk about Trevor Lawrence and, some things he had to say about the Jaguars' upcoming season. So he recently said, the best days are definitely ahead of us. And this is talking on NFL Network. Speaking individually as well in my game, I think I'm far from playing my best football, and that's ahead of me, so I'm really excited about that. The Jaguars made a decent amount of moves this offseason, signed a couple of linemen, brought in Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. Also brought in Devin Duvernay as well. But, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for Trevor Lawrence. And there were some comments that Craig Carden made on the Craig Carden show on FS1. He said, I don't know, because this is talking about the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. I don't know because I don't know what Trevor Lawrence is anymore. This was a team that 9 weeks into last year, they had the number one seed sitting right there in their laps, and he just had to play better football. They would have won the division. They could have had home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And actually, it's funny because when I was watching receiver last night, when the 49ers ended their losing streak and Deebo Samuel came back from the injury, the Jaguars at that point were 6-2. 6-2. And they finished 9-8. Carden also said C.J. Stroud happened with Houston Texans, and the argument can no longer be made that Lawrence is the best quarterback in the division. He's not C.J. Stroud, or that the Jags are the best team in the division. They're not. The Texans are. This is so some strong comments made there. This is a big year for Trevor Lawrence. But I would say the only thing I would argue is that Trevor Lawrence got banged up towards the end of the year. I think if he doesn't get hurt against the Bengals, I think they win that game. Shouldn't have played against the Browns. The Buccaneers game, that was brutal. I think he had 3 interceptions in that game. But yeah, if they just win against the Bengals, we're having a different conversation. They make the playoffs, but that didn't happen. They went on a tailspin of their own. You had them in the AFC, the Eagles collapsing in the NFC. Although the Eagles still made the playoffs, the Jaguars just flat out missed it. I mean, they lost to the Titans at the end of the year. Titans finished 6-11. But yeah, it's a big year, and I agree with Trevor Lawrence. His best football is ahead of him. He's got to go out there and show it. Play more like the Trevor Lawrence that went on a run towards the end of 2022 that led to a Jaguars playoff berth. That's what we got to see. But we got to see a better version of that. and we've talked about Trevor Lawrence before. From the hype around him as a prospect to now, it's kind of been a little disappointing. We're expecting more. And I feel like I'm on the positive side when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like we will see that. But if we don't, that's a problem. If the Jags end up missing the playoffs, well, there's going to be changes. Well, they paid Trevor Lawrence. So whatever happens this year, Doug Peterson's going to be gone. Trent Baalke's going to be gone. But, yeah, I think the Jags, can bounce back. I feel like I'm positive with a lot of teams, but it's just the AFC is going to be very competitive. But it's going to be tougher for the Jags, because this is not, they were 8-3 at one point last year. You might not get out to that kind of start this year. And also, the teams in your division are going to be better. The Texans, they were ahead of schedule last year. Now, expectations are high for them. And they look like they're going to be a force in the AFC. You're playing against them. You got Anthony Richardson coming back with the Colts. Colts could be a, sneaky good team this year. With Anthony Richardson back with Jonathan Taylor for a full season. The Titans, look, I'm sorry, Titans, but I still look at you as the last place team in the division. But they could prove me wrong. They've put weapons around Will Levis. And if he has a big jump in year 2, they could be a problem. So you're coming into this season, you're the Jaguars, you're coming into this season, and the landscape of your division is completely different than what it was last year, where the division was a layup. An easy layup. Now, I struggle with layups. So basically, the Jaguars are me trying to put up a layup. Because I'm not really that good at basketball, but still, that was a layup. They were 8-3. They looked like they were going to win the division. They had the chance to get home field advantage, and they didn't get any of that. They missed the playoffs entirely. They still finished with a winning record. Same record that they finished with when they made the playoffs the year before, but didn't matter. Didn't matter. Instead, we had to see the Steelers and Mason Rudolph make the playoffs. At 10-7, the Steelers, after losing back-to-back games to the Cardinals and the Patriots, they made the playoffs over the Jaguars. It's very disappointing end to the Jaguar season last year. But they got a chance to redeem themselves, and let's see if they do it. It's going to be tougher. And I think got to rely upon Travis Etienne as well. Because he played really well for them last year. So running the football, I think, is also key. But, yeah, protect Trevor Lawrence. Because Trevor Lawrence got knocked around a lot. And we'll see, how Brian Thomas Jr. is. I don't think this Jaguars offense, I think, is, on paper, is solid. But someone's got to step up and be that number one wide receiver. Like Christian Kirk, has played well. I think he was banged up last year. But his first year in Jacksonville, he was good. So you got him. Evan Ingram has been solid for them. Gabe Davis was banged up last year for the Bills. I think he's, not a bad player to have. If he's like your number 3, although a lot of people expected him to do more, especially after the playoff game he had against the Chiefs a few years ago. But on paper, I think this Jaguars offense is solid. It's just, go out there and improve it. That's really it. And Trevor Lawrence is getting paid a lot of money, $55 million a year. Although I don't think he deserved that kind of money. I think he deserved to get paid, just not that kind of money. Go out there and show that you deserve that top dollar. Now, we'll go over the top 10 quarterbacks list that came out. Trevor Lawrence is not on that list. So, show that you could be a top 10 quarterback. Show that you could be a top 5 quarterback. Because that's what you were drafted to be. And last year was a step back. Now you got to take a step forward. Take 2 steps forward. But it's going to be tougher. So, I think, like I said, I'm on the positive side of Trevor Lawrence. I think, he is the guy for Jacksonville. But, yeah, you're coming off of a disappointing end to your season last year. It's a clean slate. Wipe that away and see what you can do this year. And if they could go out there and, say, listen, Texans, you guys might have gotten better, but, and we collapsed last year. This is still our division. They could do that. That would go a long way. But it's tough to think like that now. So, and again, especially with the conference that you play in. It's a loaded conference. It's going to be very tough. So that's really my thoughts on the Jaguars. We're expecting more out of Trevor Lawrence this year. Let's see what kind of year he can have. But like I said, Jaguars don't play well. They don't make the playoffs. Doug Peterson, Trent Baalke, they're gone. So that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think. How do you see the Jaguars performing in 2024? It's going to be an interesting year for them. Again, they were one of the other teams. Them and the Eagles both collapsed last year. And the Jags are looking to rewrite the wrong and, find themselves back in the postseason again. Because they took a step forward. After the Trevor Lawrence's rookie season with Urban Meyer, Doug Peterson comes in. Yeah, they didn't get off to a great start, but they finished the season strong. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game, and then took a step back because of the collapse that they had. But we'll see what happens this year. We will see. Just protect Trevor Lawrence. And that's one of the major things. So we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, because I know I referenced it, we're going to talk about some NFL executives' takes on Brock Purdy. He was left out of the top 10 in that top 10 quarterback list. So I just wanted to give you my thoughts on what the executive had to say and, give you my opinion on Brock Purdy as well. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Brock Purdy and just some NFL executives' takes on Brock Purdy. So there was that quarterback list that came out, and Brock Purdy is not in as the top 10. And Brock Purdy's not in the top 10. So you have Patrick Mahomes at 1, Joe Burrow 2, Josh Allen 3, Lamar Jackson 4, Matthew Stafford at 5, Justin Herbert 6, C.J. Stroud 7, Aaron Rodgers 8, Jared Goff 9, Dak Prescott 10. So that's the list. So there's no Brock Purdy. I do disagree with the list. And I think we'll talk more about this list during the week as well. Maybe I'll give you my list. But, yeah, Brock Purdy's not on there. And Brock Purdy last year, played like an MVP candidate. 49ers had their struggles during the season, but I thought Purdy played well. And the reason, though, so you had two takes on Brock Purdy. Now, one of them was a positive, one of them was a negative in his favor. So one NFL executive said it was hard to keep him out of the top 10. He willed that team to the Super Bowl. Only right to give him serious consideration because he was on the honorable mentions. And then another anonymous NFC executive found it really easy. You're not going to win because of him in most cases. He's a really good system quarterback. And that's something that has been talked about a lot, that Brock Purdy is a system quarterback. The only reason why he's good is because of the system that he's in. And I don't know. For me, I think it's both. I think he does benefit from the system that he's in, but I also do think you got to give him credit because, the 49ers, they made it to the Super Bowl last year, and they made it to the NFC Championship game the year before that, and he got hurt, unfortunately, in that game against the Eagles. But I don't know. For me, I feel like it is both. Because, Trey Lance, when he got his opportunities to play, he unfortunately got hurt, but it just didn't really work out with him. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I feel like they were limited with what they could do with Garoppolo. I feel like with Purdy, there's a little bit more to Purdy. I feel like Purdy could take off with it if he has to. I don't know. I feel like the 49ers operate a lot better with Brock Purdy than they ever did with Garoppolo or Trey Lance. Now, part of that you could also say is because, they got Christian McCaffrey, which I agree with. But I don't know. For me, it's just watching the 49ers with Purdy, I feel like, he's, like I said, he's operated the offense better than I think some of the other quarterbacks that they've had in the past. But that's just my opinion. And you know what? You got to give Brock Purdy credit. He was the last pick in the draft. It didn't look like this guy was ever going to see the field. But he did. And he has taken full advantage of that. Last year, 4,200 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Those are good numbers. And, I know the middle part of the season they struggled, and I got up to that in the receiver series on Netflix because when Deebo Samuel got hurt, they're talking about how much they really miss Deebo. It's a big part of what they do. And that's why, if they lose Brandon Ayuk, how is that going to impact Brock Purdy? Is that really going to negatively impact him, and he's not going to play like how he usually does? But, some of the other quarterbacks that I think are in the top 10, again, everybody evaluates the quarterback position differently and every position differently. But for me, I think having Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great. I talked about it earlier in the show. But I think for me, at least from my perspective on this, when he's coming off of a major injury where he only played 4 snaps, I don't think he should be on the top 10. That's just me. It's purely from him coming off of an injury. I wouldn't put him in the top 10. Matthew Stafford, I thought was a little high on the list. But you know what? He's coming off of a solid year. It's hard. Ranking lists are hard. But that's why, like, I'm doing the quarterback rankings. I mean, within the division, you're only ranking 4 guys. Well, today we did technically 5 because we don't know what the Vikings situation. But, 10, 15. I mean, there's guys that rank all 32 quarterbacks. It's hard. And it really all depends on how you evaluate the position. I mean, I get why Rodgers is on the list because, again, all-time great. And, if he's healthy, he's going to play well. But I think for me, a guy coming off of a major injury and playing only 4 snaps, I don't know if I'm putting him in the top 10. Just because I don't know what to expect from him this year, coming off of that injury. But if he's healthy, should play well. Yeah, I don't think it should be, that easy to say, no, Brock Purdy's outside the top 10. I mean, look at the NFC Championship game against the Lions. You think Jimmy Garoppolo's coming back from 17 points down against the Lions? I don't think so. Now, the 49ers had plays go their way that kind of led them back into the game, but I don't know. I feel like with Garoppolo, it doesn't play out that way. It's... I don't know. I think Brock Purdy is solid, but yeah, he does. I mean, if he goes to any other, if he goes to like the Giants or I mean, who else? The Panthers. He's not. He's not going to be the Brock Purdy that we know right now. It'd be completely different. He ended up in a great situation. I think both things can be true. Yeah, benefits from the system, but you know what? He takes advantage of it. I mean, look at some of these other quarterbacks that are in great situations. I'm bringing up Tua. Tua's in a good situation. But how far has he gotten with the Dolphins? Now, you could also say, well, the 49ers have one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Dolphins last year dealt with a ton of injuries, but still. Look at the offense that Tua has. They have not won a single playoff game. Brock Purdy is going into now year 3, second full year as a starter. He's made it to 2 NFC championship games, and he's made it to a Super Bowl. And I thought he played good enough in that Super Bowl to win that Super Bowl, but they didn't. So, I don't know. It's going to be a debate that is going to be had for a long time. And if Brock Purdy struggles at all during the season, those Brock Purdy critics are going to come out and say, yeah, he's not the answer. And maybe he isn't the answer. Because at some point, you're going to lose some of these guys. You're not going to have Christian McCaffrey in his prime. He's got I think he's still got a few years left in his prime, and then he's going to, start to decline. George Kittle, how much longer is he going to play? It's going to be different. And the 49ers are going to have a big decision to make because they're going to have to pay him. So that's going to be interesting, how that unfolds. But, yeah, it's just at some point, all these guys that the 49ers have surrounding Brock Purdy are not going to be there. And if they do pay him and give him that contract, how is he going to respond to that? So, but you want to see him succeed. You do. And he's a very likable guy. And, go out there and prove the doubters wrong once again. But I don't think it's as easy as some of these executives think to leave him out of the top 10. Because he did play like a top 10 quarterback last year. But like I said, I'm going to attempt to try to, make my own list. But it's hard because it's like, look, I think Rodgers, if he's healthy, yeah, he plays like a top 10 quarterback. But like, He's coming off of an injury. I don't know if I want to put him in my top 10. It's hard. Ranking lists are so tough because whatever you do, somebody's not going to be happy with it. But that's what it's all about. It's having different opinions. I think Brock Purdy deserves to be on that list, but again, who are you taking out? Probably Rodgers, maybe. But then you'll have people saying, how could you rank Brock Purdy over Aaron Rodgers? Well, it's the current version of Aaron Rodgers right now, coming off of a significant injury. You're telling me Aaron Rodgers is healthy and he's going to play like how he did his MVP years. Yeah, Brock Purdy can stay off the top 10. But I think there's other guys that they left out that probably deserve the spot over Rodgers just because he played 4 snaps last year. But again, everybody interprets it differently. But let me know what you guys think, because I know this is something we talked about during the year, last year as well. Is Brock Purdy a system quarterback? Is he not? What are your thoughts? But yeah, I think both things can be true. That's really what it comes down to. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well throughout the day. Get different perspectives on different sports. Right now we're in the All-Star break for baseball, so there's really not a lot happening. We had the Home Run Derby last night. Tonight is the All-Star game. But yeah, we are slowly but surely making our way towards the preseason, and then we're going to get to the real thing, which I can't wait for it. So yeah, that is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. We'll be back again same time tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.